Hello, everyone. I warmly welcome all of you to our second video of the English speaking spiritual channel in YouTube. So, in the first video, we briefly discussed about our spiritual lineage, which was founded by um, an enlightened master in Sri Lanka. Then we briefly discussed how we revitalized Buddhism in Sri Lanka, and then his teachings include the teachings from all three yanas of Buddhism. So we also briefly speak about these teachings and how they are relevant to Theravada, Mahayana and Tantrayana Buddhist schools. In the previous video, in addition to very well known details, we also established the concept of this divine incarnation process of an enlightened master. So I gave a clear explanation to this process, and I made a clear distinction between the bodhisattva path, who is end of the day becoming a Buddha, and then an Arya Shravaka or an Arihant, who is walking on the Arya Shravaka path. So with all this information given, now you should have an understanding that there are two different paths in any spiritual tradition. We were speaking about a Buddhist tradition, and these paths are the typical bodhisattva path and then the Arya Shravaka or the disciple path. And then the choice of walking upon a path depends on your maturity, your the fulfilled paramitas and many other things. So if you want more information, you can go back to that video, and then if you also have some comments regarding the first video, please do not hesitate to share in any of our videos. So today's topic is about the samadhis that we develop, that we cultivate through meditation. I wanted to specifically make a video on this subject because the samadhi, the term, and also the samadhis that we are expecting to see in meditation, has a lot of distorted information and also has a lot of distractions, mainly because of different spiritual traditions and different spiritual practices and different opinions stemming from different yogis and different cultures. So I want to make a clear distinction also here, how the samadhis that we find, the noble samadhis, the samadhis that were developed according to the eightfold noble path in Buddhism, are different to the samadhis that we find in other traditions. For an example, Hindu and Yogic tradition. So if you recall the basic teachings of Buddhism, so we speak about the Four Noble Truths and its relation to our suffering and why the suffering takes place in our mind level. And so the Buddha found that the cure already lies within us, and only we can find the solution for our problems. Nobody else can help, so that the proper mind training can not only solve your day-to-day problems, but also can lead you to the final liberation. And then, depending on the different capacities of the individual, Buddha had proposed several paths, and those were the paths that we actually discussed in our the previous video. So why the samadhis are called noble in Buddhist path, and why these samadhis are superior to other samadhis or the samadhi types that were developed based on the energies and chakra activation. So this is a very intriguing topic to discuss. So my purpose of revealing this information to you is to give a clarification of how the real samadhis should look like, and why we should not go after um, hallucinations and names and forms and um all you know uh, fascinating spiritual mumbo jumbo. Instead, Buddhism puts its emphasis and also the main focus on eradicating defilements. So, for instance, if you look at the noble eightfold noble path, whoever uh, whoever that is walking upon this path, whoever dedicating themselves to reach the liberation through this path, he can be a bodhisattva, he can be an Arya Shravaka or a disciple. They have to follow the same path, because the mind training in Buddhism is essentially starting from the right mindfulness, so that the baseline for all the meditation practices in Buddhist tradition finds its roots in mindfulness. So let's talk about different samadhi types that we find in other religious traditions. In this case, I am mainly referring to Hindu yogic tradition, and I am no way saying that their findings are not important. Of course, the samadhis that you develop through chakra activation, similar to the samadhis that we find in Hindu and yogic tradition, they are basically helping us to also come to the noble samadhis in Buddhist tradition. So nothing is actually wasted. So nothing is going in vain. So this is what I have to explain in the first place. And when we talk about the samadhis in typical Buddhist, typical Hindu and yogic tradition, we have the samadhis that we can develop by activating our chakras. So for an example, we have this lower three chakras, mundane chakras. So when I say they are mundane, it means that they have more of a gross quality rather than comparing to the higher chakras. So when you activate your higher chakras, your the mind awareness, your awareness, mental awareness goes into very subtle state. But when your lower chakras are activated, your mental awareness cannot go into such subtle states, so that there is a little bit of a grossness in those states. So the samadhis that you develop through activating these chakras one by one, if you start from the bottom, the mundane chakras, then you move from the grossless, the mental states or the samadhis that are a bit grossy, and then you move from the gross level of mental states or the samadhis to subtle states. So for an example, if you move from the third chakra, Manipura chakra, then you jump from the material realm or the mundane chakras to spiritual chakras in one go by moving to the fourth chakra. And when you are let's say you have still this gross samadhis developed in the lower three chakras, then you won't be able to see certain the names and forms in the universe. But when you move through the fourth chakra to the higher chakras, for an example this the seventh or the crown chakra, then you started to see all kind of the spiritual information related to any tradition that you follow. If you come from Christian tradition, perhaps you would see the cross and this tetragrammaton symbol for God and many other universal symbols. So that is inevitable. So that's how the universe is trying to communicate with you through these energy channels. So in this communication, the universe has to inevitably choose some names and forms, because without the names and forms, without symbolical communication, it cannot actually reach out to you. And if you're coming from these Abrahamic traditions, you would even notice angels, certain angels. They are there to deliver messages from God or higher realms, and they even would help you to reach out to a spiritual guru or spiritual commune that have common interest with you. And if you're coming from a Hindu tradition, then it is very typical to see the names and forms such as Lord Shiva and then Ganesha when you move from these lower chakras to the higher chakras. So when you are at the third eye level or the Ajna chakra level, definitely you would notice the presence of Lord Shiva as name and forms. So likewise, for any chakras that you activate through this journey, through visualization, or maybe by taking the help from samadhi transmission from a guru, or by doing your own yogic sadhanas, you would be able to come to the samadhis developed through this activation of chakras, and then you would also be able to see, witness these names and forms. And during deep concentration at each chakra level, you would be able to even communicate with these names and forms. So this sounds fascinating, doesn't it? Yes, but according to Buddhist tradition, none of these fascinating things are really important for the yogi, or they don't make much sense when it comes to Buddhist meditation tradition and Buddhist meditation practices. So in Buddhist meditation, the primary focus is given not to activating energy centers or going into higher energy state, but to eradicate our mental fetters or defilements. But in Buddhist tradition, we also have certain teachings that talk about the mental concentrations developed through visualization, or focusing on certain external mental objects, so that this meditation technique falls under the category called samatha meditation. So in samatha, you can either focus on an external object and then develop your mental concentrations, or you can also have an internal object. So these objects, we call them nimitti or nimitta, or the signs, meditative signs, so that we can use this meditative signs to dive deeper into our mental continuum or meditative absorptions. And by developing these subtle mental concentrations, then we go into jhanic states. So similar to Hindu yogic tradition, in Buddhist tradition we also talk about jhanas. If you look at the 8 limbs of Patanjali yoga, you would notice there are several samadhis mentioned, and those samadhis were actually similar to the jhanas, samadhis developed through jhanas in Buddhism. So in the Hindu tradition, we say that we develop our mental concentrations or meditation from dharana, that is the first, the basic stage. So in dharana, what we try to do is we try to remember and contemplate on a meditation object. It could be an external object, or as I mentioned, it could be an internal object. And then we bring our mental awareness totally absorbed into that mental object, and that is what we call dhyana. So that the whatever object that you have been contemplating or trying to put your focus on, in dharana stage you are trying to memorize it. In the dhyana stage, due to the intense memorizing of the object, now when you close your eyes, you can have your object clearly visible in front of you. It could be a Buddha statue, it could be a light symbol or light kasina, similar to kasina meditation in Buddhist jhanic practices. It could be even an internal nimitta of your meditation, internal nimitta, internal nimitta that you see at the very beginning of your meditation. So likewise, these the light symbols, light signs, they can be used as stepping stone to develop subtle mental concentrations. So from dharana we come to the dhyana, and from dhyana we come to the samadhi. So in the samadhi state, what happens is, earlier you had, in the jhanic state, you had the total mental absorption, the complete mental absorption to the meditative object. But in samadhi state, now your mind totally disappears, and due to the disappearance of your mind, maybe you are totally covered by the meditation object, and you and the meditation object become they both become one. Or sometimes due to this disappearance of you, the clear light of your mind can also come to certain practice for many practitioners. So it depends on the practice of your meditation. It depends on the maturity of your samsara and many other things, and also your merits. So the bottom line is, I was trying to explain the three states of our mind based on the typical Indian yogic tradition: dharana, dhyana, samadhi. You can find a similar explanation also in Buddhist tradition. So the explanation that we give for Buddhist samadhis is also similar, but here the only difference is the samadhis in Buddhist tradition were developed based on mindfulness, as I mentioned. In Buddhist meditation techniques, we also do samatha, and this samatha meditation can perhaps give you a kasina light as a mental absorption, or a Buddha statue as your mental absorption, and then you do further meditation and your mind totally disappears into the meditation object, so that you and the kasina may become one. So there won't be any separation between you and the kasina, or you and Buddha statue would become one, so that there won't be any separation between you and the object. So sometimes when you follow this chakra activation path or the energy path, at certain points there could be a possibility that you get stuck in a specific energy center, and you don't know how to progress from that. Usually, as I mentioned before, if the chakras are getting activated due to the natural evolutionary process, then everything is fine. Then from moving from one chakra to the other, it's not something that you do by effort, but in case that if you really get stuck, for an example, if you are really stuck at the 6th chakra level or the ajna chakra level, then you don't know how to move forward to the 7th chakra. And also you don't have only one samadhi in the 7th chakra level. In the 7th or the crown chakra level, there are several samadhis available to you, and because of that reason you really don't know which samadhi or at which stage that you are in. So that's why at the 6th chakra level, specifically due to the arising of your ego, because of the very strong ego identification, you need to have really cultivate love, compassion, and these type of qualities. You have to live by your heart, not by your information and not by your ego self. So if you are employed at an office, due to the activation of Ajna chakra, perhaps you would act you know in a much smarter way. Of course, acting smarter is fine, that's how we all should do, but if you try to also make yourself dominant and make yourself above other people, then that is a clear display of your egocentric behavior, which should not happen at this level. And then you need to transcend this ego identification, and then only you can arrive to the seventh chakra and also live by your authentic self. So that is one remark I would like to make for this concern. Yes, so in this section, I'm going to give you a little summary on the topics we have discussed so far, and also a classification on uh, different meditative styles. So, the first summary is about samatha meditation and the intention of it. So, the samatha meditation we do to arrive at calm abiding, because only if and only if we have a calm abiding nature in our mind, we can do proper vipassana training. Because without calm abiding, you cannot really being attentive to subtle mental formations. And if you do some of the meditation in any of the ways, um, it will definitely lead you to the activation of certain chakras in your body, and that is inevitable. So that happens mainly because you focus your energy, the whole energy of your body, to a certain center. So most of the time I have seen that meditators do some of the meditation and bring their focal attention to Ajna chakra, or the third eye chakra, so that they can simply develop all the subtle meditative absorptions, such as formed and formless absorptions that we discuss in Buddhist tradition. And when it comes to chakra activation, um, when you see some colors during your meditation, it doesn't necessarily mean that that specific chakra is fully active. No, it is just the internal activation. But then there is also an activation to that chakra that you have to achieve from the outside. So, therefore, each chakra has its inner work and also the outer work. And unless both of these work is completed, you cannot really have the fully activated, fully blown chakra. Sometimes you can arrive to some of the samadhi, but still having unactivated chakras, still having blocked chakras. So when you are enjoying the blissful nature of the samatha samadhi, it doesn't necessarily mean that the relevant chakra or the corresponding energy center is fully active. So there could be still blockages. And by explaining this, what I want to mention is there is no direct correlation. But if you have fully active chakras, it is really easy to develop all the samatha samadhis in one go. Okay, so in this section is where we discuss about the classification of all the samadhis we find in the Yogic and Hindu tradition and Buddhist tradition. So in the Hindu tradition, so we have a few terms that we often find in internet. So suppose that you study Hindu yoga and meditation techniques from, let's say, Patanjali's yoga, or it could be from Ramana Maharishi's yoga, it could be Paramahansa Ramakrishna's, whatever tradition you follow, you cannot miss these, the basic samadhi types. So we have savikalpa samadhis. So these are the samadhis that you come to in meditation, come to experience in meditation based on lower chakra activation, and therefore these samadhis have only mundane qualities. And then you have the nirvikalpa samadhi. So this nirvikalpa samadhi in Hindu tradition is a bit similar to the nirodha samapatti, or the cessation of consciousness in Buddhist tradition. And nirvikalpa samadhi is a higher samadhi. And sometimes we can also compare it to the fourth form dhyana in Buddhist tradition. So usually you can come to nirvikalpa samadhi when you go beyond the ajna chakra level. And when you reach the sahasrakara, or the crown chakra, then you come to experience all these, the golden color samadhis, or how do we call the anandamaya kosha samadhis. So these anandamaya samadhis are discussed in detail in the yogic tradition, and also we briefly discuss about these samadhis in another term in Buddhist tradition. So for an example, in the formless absorptions in Buddhist tradition are synonymous with anandamaya samadhis. And then we come to the next level called the sahaja samadhi. So that is the state where you're having this unbroken samadhi connection, or the unbroken energy connection with the universe. And through the sahaja samadhi, you can be either in 24 hours in connection to nirvikalpa or anandamaya samadhis. So when you have this uninterrupted, unbroken samadhis throughout the day, then whatever the word that is spoken from you is not from your ego self, but is necessarily from the higher self. So that's why we find this term often in Ramana Maharishi's tradition, where he is always absorbed in sahaja samadhi, even without being in meditation. And then we have the final version called kaivalya samadhi, is where the yogi transcends his physical body, so that he experiences the death process. Then we move to the samadhis found in Buddhist tradition. Similar to in the yogic tradition, we also have this samadhi types called form absorptions, and we can attain the form absorption by activating lower chakras. For example, we have this first form absorption to fourth form absorption, and then by activating the chakras between the third eye to the crown, we can reach to the formless absorption, as I mentioned. But remember, so far all the samadhis we have discussed so far, from the Hindu yogic tradition to the first and second one in Buddhist tradition, they are all, I would say, not as superior as the samadhis that we attain by cutting through the defilements. So that is one thing that I really want to make a remark on, because the samadhis, the real supermundane samadhis that we discuss in Buddhist traditions, we attain them only by cutting through our mental fetters or the defilements. So these are the samadhis that we discuss in point 3 and 4 in the Buddhist section. So the real supermundane samadhis only can be attained by mindfulness and eradicating fetters. So these are the fruition minds that appear to the Four Nobles in the Buddhist tradition. So I already mentioned about the stream enterer, and then he can further develop to Arihant stage by cutting through these mental fetters. And these are the practitioners from the disciple path or the Theravada tradition. But in Mahayana or the bodhisattva tradition, we have the Buddhas and bodhisattvas. So the Buddhas and bodhisattvas also have a special kind of fruition mind, and these are called the Sambhogakaya, the fruition, and Dharmakaya, the fruition minds. So these can be only attained by Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who are following the Mahayana Bodhisattva path. So I hope both of these slides give you a really good classification on the different types of samadhis and why the so-called Buddhist samadhis that were based on eradicating fetters are superior to all other attainments. However, in Vipassana meditation or the meditation based on mindfulness is totally different. It's a whole different story. So why Buddha had found something totally new by his own effort that we actually could not find in other yogic tradition. The main reason was Buddha was also developing all these mental concentrations in samatha category, similar to all the Patanjali yogas and whatever the samadhis that we find in yogic and Hindu tradition. Buddha had attained all of them, but still he felt something is incomplete in his realization. Still he felt that his realization is not really complete, because even though he had been through all these blissful experiences, even though he was able to stay in meditation without any of his mind chatter for several number of days, when he goes outside, when he meets people, when he confronts many different situations, then he cannot withstand them. He was unable to bear the pain and all the impulses that were coming from the society. So then he realized that the enlightenment that he was seeking cannot be found in typical the yogic tradition, in the typical meditation techniques, or by simply activating chakras. He cannot really find this truth. So the freedom that he realized was based on his own effort, and that's why he introduced this new the strategy called the Eightfold Noble Path. So in these eight folds, the first six folds we don't need to actually discuss, because these are very straightforward the points, and we basically relate these points to the typical human life, so that in other words, if you don't have the right view, the right livelihood, the right job, then of course you cannot proceed to do proper meditation, and of course you won't be able to cultivate proper mindfulness. Why? Because you always run into troubles, right? If you don't have a right livelihood, then you will end up in jail. So that kind of lifestyle cannot help you progress in any kind of meditation or any spiritual activity. So then the first 6 points, they are very straightforward, and we don't need to actually discuss about them. Okay, but I would mention one thing. When we say the right view, in typical Buddhist the typical Buddhist idea is that the right view is only about having a great faith in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, or the triple gems, and having also the belief in the good and bad deeds, and if you perform a good deed, of course you will get good karma. A bad deed, the opposite karma. And then you also believe that this karmic system happens on you. So these kind of rudimentary things that we usually say that okay, these the rudimentary concepts are the ones that fall under the right view. But there is much more to the right view than this basic information. I think the right view comes to us when we are free from the duality. So when Gautama Buddha, when he also performed his the noble search, or the Arya Pariyeshana, in my language we say that, so when he was performing the noble search, he realized that the only way to have a peace in our mind first is to be free from the duality. And when we sway between two dualistic poles, then of course we won't have any freedom and we won't have any mental peace. So without having these basic needs, we cannot really progress in any kind of meditation. So first you have to be free from the duality, and you have to be free from falling into extremes. And that's why Buddha rejected the Kama Sukallikana Yoga, or the how do you call the luxurious lifestyle at once, and also the other extreme, Attakillamatana Yoga, or the extreme level of suffering for finding truth. So that is one example of being free from dualistic polarities. And then when you become and when you started to walk in the middle, when you follow the middle path, so to speak, then only you can come to understand that what you have to do is not about going into any extreme level. And in fact, what you have to do is something that you can do now, here and now. You don't need to run into let's say a monastery. You don't need to run into forest. You don't need to run into a retreat to find the truth, because the truth is always within. All you have to do is to undertake an inward journey. So this is what the Gautama Buddha had presented and had realized. And then, even though he had all these blissful, fascinating samadhis based on chakra activation or the samatha meditation, he still had the defilements, so that he realized that the only way to eradicate all the fetters or the defilements in our mind is to cultivate mindfulness daily and at each moment. So based on that, he presented a mindfulness based practice which is very extensive, and which also needs a lot of dedication from the yogi. So we say that in typical Buddhist practices, we say that if you are fully dedicated, then you can become an arihant within 7 maximum years. So there is a saying like that. So it all comes down to your dedication and your commitments. So coming back to the point, so what are the defilements? So that is the next important thing that we have to discuss. And if you follow the Eightfold Noble Path, then by practicing in this way, you can go into attainments, and these attainments have 4 paths and 4 fusion. So the first path is the stream entering, or entering into the stream of Nibbana, or the realization. So in Buddhist jargon we call it Sotapanna. So the best thing about entering into the stream is you can never fall into any um, hell realms in afterlives, and that is guaranteed if you really enter the Sotapanna or the stream entry level. See, if I say that this is the best safety deposit that you have in your for your samsara existence, then you would definitely agree to that, right? Because nothing else actually can verify that whether you are walking on the right direction or not. Even none of your merits. You could be accumulating a lot of merits by spending a lot of money, or maybe by your own wishful efforts, but still there's an uncertainty. Only way to have this certainty of moving into a better life, most likely a human life, is at least to reach stream entry level. So this is a very important point that I want to mention regarding the Eightfold Noble Path. So far we have spoken about the yogic the samadhis based on yogic and Hindu background, and also the samadhis developed through chakra activation and samatha. And now it's time to talk about the Arya or the noble samadhis developed through eradicating fetters. So we briefly explained about the fetters in the stream entry, or the very first stage of the Eightfold Noble Path. And then when you intensely practice vipassana and mindfulness, you notice all these emerging defilements in your mind. So from the bottom layers of your mind, time to time these defilements arise due to the contamination of your mind to the outside world through the five senses. And the vipassana is supposed to detect that, and then being aware of these defilements, so that with the gradual practice in the long run you would be able to cut this contamination. You would be able to be free from this contamination, and as a result the certain layers of your mind will get purified, and this purity of your mind will appear to you when you do meditation. So how to know whether you have attained the fruition of a path? So in this case I am talking about the fruition of Sotapanna, or the stream entry stage. So you have been doing meditation now, and then you have this well established samatha concentrations, and now you also do vipassana in parallel to that, and then you cut your fetters as a gradual practice, and then all the fetters related to self identity and attachment to rites and rituals, so these kind of things you eradicate. And among all these fetters, self identity is the most troublesome defilement to eradicate at the stream entry stage. So the self identity is your sensitivity to your identity, or your ego identification with the outside world phenomena. So when people say bad things about you, when people discriminate you, when people say things that are really identified by your ego, for an example your nationality, your way of eating, or maybe the food that you like to eat most, people talk about that in front of you, and then you get a bad feeling about it. So all these kind of sensitivities belong to self-identity. So once you are free from the self-identity, then you cannot be shaken by the outside world incidents. It doesn't mean that you don't listen to other people. No, you listen, and you also live with them, and you also perfectly understand other people. But due to the cutting of these fetters, then a new freedom will arise to you, so that during your daily life you have this tremendous freedom of being free from identified with the worldly things and worldly phenomena. So that freedom you will detect in day-to-day life. But that is not sufficient. Also during the meditation, you should be able to notice the fruition mind with with substantial purity in it as clear light during meditation. So what happens is, when you enter into meditation, so you start from your samatha samadhi. Let's say you start with the breathing at the beginning, and then slowly you won't be able to feel the breathing, and then your consciousness starts to disappear, and at some point you will come to the cessation of consciousness, and this cessation of consciousness will be immediately followed by the purified clear light due to cutting off your mental fetters. So one would ask, how do we detect the clear light if the cessation of consciousness happens? Because consciousness is what identifies all these mental objects or meditative objects, right? Without the consciousness, you cannot really see what is happening. Well, so what happens is, when this happens in your first time in your meditation, you won't be able to experience it. But if you continue doing meditation like this, if you continue doing your practice mindfulness like this, with the long-term engagement, perhaps after a few months you will start to see that you go into meditation and then there is no person, no individuality, and then you return from meditation. So this is how you feel. You enter into your meditation, and then slowly your individuality disappears with your concentration, and then you become one with the existence. One could call it also the satori, and in that very experience you disappears, and then slowly you re-emerge from meditation and come to your normal consciousness. So it takes time. It takes time to realize you were in that stage, because since the consciousness is not available during this time, it takes time for you to realize you were in that state. So likewise, for each stage in the Noble Eightfold Path, you have the path, the practice, and the fruition. So at each stage you eradicate specific type of fetters relevant to the level of progression. So at the stream entry, you eradicate these basic fetters. So likewise, you go to the next stage, once returner, you eradicate another few fetters. In the non-returner stage, also few more fetters, but the residual fetters of the path are only eradicated at the arihantship. So likewise, you have to progress from one stage to another, and it takes time, and as a result of the completion of each stage, you would also come to experience the fruition mind during meditation. So this is what I want to clarify in this video, so that you can also experience the same thing, and then you get a clear picture before you go into meditation. And thanks for watching this video.